Hello folks, Dr. Lawrence W. Moore here, and welcome to Exploring Multimedia Art with Pd-L2ork, Season 1, Episode 1b. This is an addendum episode I am making because I've encountered in my classes some students who have had difficulty installing Pd-L2ork from the links I provide in the previous video. The problem seems to be primarily with Mac users, although I have some Mac users that had no problem installing the software. My thinking is, and I welcome any comments or input on this that might help my students out, as well as other people who watch this video series. But my thinking is that the student that I heard from today that had no problem installing it has a current, recently made Mac with an M1 processor. I'm thinking maybe I know for a fact that some of the students that have problems with it have older Macs, like 3 or 4 years old. One student has a 2015 Mac, so they're definitely Intel processors. And basically what I'm thinking is that the download link that we have on the Pd-L2ork website was probably a compile done on a more recent Mac. And so therefore it gives folks trouble. So I'm going to try and talk about all of these problems that have been encountered by my students. I welcome input, but I have some solutions that I believe will work out, and we're going to see how this goes. This video can also be useful for Windows users and Linux users because it gives you an idea of how to compile the source code on your computer, and you don't need to be a programmer to do it, but you compile the source code on your computer so it's more likely going to work for your system. Okay, so let's get on with that. Okay, so in episode 1, this is the website we went to. We got here from purrdata.info. A lot of the links will lead here to the Pd-L2ork website, and this is the software page. This is where you can download the software under these links here. It's called Burrito Supreme, and this is where you have Linux, various Linux downloads, OS X for Mac, and Windows. But there is another way of handling this. Now, I'm sure there's a link here, but I will have a link in the description to this site to see if the easy download works for you. Because those are all executable install files. Well, Windows is executable. Mac is also executable, but they're called DMG files. Basically, your install files that you run. Now, I know one student I have has had a problem where a screen comes up saying, this is from the internet, this may have malicious intent, blah, blah, blah. It's basically because these softwares are not on the list of secured softwares with Apple. And the same thing with Windows. There's a warning on Windows when you run that install from downloading it from here. In the Windows version, there is a way around it. You hit more info and it gives you the option to open anyway. In Mac, you may not get that option right away. Although one thing I remember when I used to teach on ground and we had Macs in our labs is if you right click, and if you have one of the mice that has just a single click, you hold down Command and click, and it gives you the same options as a right click. And when you do that, you can and you run open from there. Sometimes, at least it did in the past, give you a screen where there was an option to open anyway. The other thing to do is to go up to the Mac icon, which is on your menu bar way up here in the upper left. Hit that, go down to System Preferences, and under System Preferences, there's a Security and Privacy option. Now, it's best to do this right after attempting to open the file and install it. And then if you go to the Security and Privacy option there, usually you see something there where you can open the file anyway or allow it access. Now, things may have changed with more recent versions of OS X, and since I don't have a Mac and access to one, I can't double check this out, so I do welcome comments for folks that want to help out fellow Mac users in being able to open the software. Now, that being said, if you still can't install it, I know some students have given me responses like it says that you need a newer version of Pd-L2ork to open this. I don't think that's really correct. What I'm finding out so far is just that Pd-L2ork's installer kind of looks at like either the operating system or the CPU and says, I don't recognize this, and refuses to open. I think the links here were probably, this OS X link was probably compiled on an M1 processor, and that's why the M1 processor folks aren't having any trouble opening it and installing it. So this is what you do otherwise. So other than a link to the Pd-L2ork software page, I'm going to put a link down in the description to the Pd-L2ork GitHub repository. Now, don't get scared if you're not a programmer or anything. This is not a hard thing to do. What you do is you want to scroll down. I mean, it's always, you don't have to read any of this, but if you do, it does give links here that will take you right back to the software page that I showed you here to download stuff. And that's not what we really want to do in this case, since it hasn't worked out. Now, for Windows users, this is another way where you could get compile a more recent version of the software. So as we scroll down, you'll see here there's a heading for Linux. Go down further. Here's a heading for OS X, 64-bit. Now here, it actually gives you a few easy steps to compile it. The first thing is to download something called Homebrew. Now, I went to the Homebrew link, even though I'm on Windows. And the way you install Homebrew is through a terminal command on your Mac. Like you literally hit this thing to copy and paste this, and you would paste this line into your terminal. Now, if you don't know how to get to the terminal on the Mac, here's a way of getting that. So I'll provide a link for this, how to get to your terminal. And basically, I'll scroll down here. In the first step, it wants you to hit your Mac face there on your shortcut bar. Then you go to the menu, Go To. When you hit that Mac facing, you're in Finder. And then you go to Go To. And under the Go To menu, there's an option Utilities. So you select that. And then when the utilities come up, one of them is your terminal, which basically opens like a little black window with a line to enter things. That's how you get to the terminal. And then what you would copy and paste into that terminal is this line here to install Homebrew. Probably you could just hit this to copy it. And then you may need to right click in the terminal and go to paste. Or maybe the shortcut Command V will paste it. I don't know. I know that sometimes in terminal windows that I've used for different things, it doesn't let you use the shortcut command to paste, but you can right click in the window and put this in. This will install Homebrew. You don't really need to go through the rest of this stuff here. You just go back over here to the GitHub repository. Now that you have installed Homebrew, it wants you to put this into Homebrew's window. Like basically now we're no longer in the Mac terminal. You want to open up Homebrew after you installed it to your computer. And this is called installing the dependencies. These are things that the source code needs. Now, once again, if you go to the upper right-hand corner of this box, you can copy and paste. And then in Homebrew's window, which will probably look a lot like your terminal window, you will right-click, go to paste, and paste this stuff in so you don't have to type it in manually. And when you paste that in, hit enter or return, and it should start doing it. Some of these things take steps, and they list here about how long it'll take. Like 10 minutes for this, 15 minutes to install Homebrew, 10 minutes to execute these dependencies. When it appears to be done with that, you then want to take Pd-L2ork source code and put it in. And you could do that with just this line, pasting this into Homebrew. Copy, paste this into Homebrew, and that will basically put the source code on your computer in Homebrew's folder. And then you need to change directories after that. This is just another copy and paste. Basically, once this source code is downloaded, it's in a folder called Pd-L2ork, and that folder is probably in a Homebrew folder. And then you build your installer by just typing the word make. Hit enter, and this can take a little while. It says 15 minutes here. Then after that's done, there should now be a .dmg file in your current directory, which lets you install the app. Basically, the DMG file is the file type that that Mac uses as its installer. Now, when it says current directory, you may have to browse around and look for that. I think in Finder, you would probably go to Applications, go to Homebrew, or you could use search functions on your computer and search for Pd-L2ork. If you do a search for that and you find it comes up with a folder, and that folder has a DMG file in it, that's what you want to use to install it. And this should also circumvent any problems with saying this might be malicious software from the internet. And now, hopefully, since it was compiled on your computer, it will work for you. Next, if you're a Windows user and you want to do the same type of thing, it's a different process. You download something called MSys2. I had no problem doing that. And then you download and install, what is it? INO, I-N-N-O, setup, quick start. Basically, these lead you to different websites where you can download these softwares. They're all free, and they don't put any kind of like, if you install them from these links, there's not going to be any kind of surprises of extra stuff in it. And then for the 32-bit version, which is for me the only one that actually worked from this, basically you would run this, because there's like 3 different flavors, as they call them, of MSys to get installed to your computer. So you want to use the 32-bit one. And just like I was explaining for the Mac users, you copy and paste things over. And this is where I did found that in the MSys window, when you run MSys, it has this terminal window that doesn't let you hit Control-V to paste in. You got to right-click with your mouse and go to paste. But you do one thing at a time. Just follow these steps. And this big box does have a copy option right there. And you follow the steps and it worked for me. And so I found that the install file that it made for me, on your computer, MSys gets installed right on your C drive in its own folder. You go into that folder, there's a folder called Home, and in there you'll see a Pd-L2ork folder. You go into that, and that's where you'll find your Microsoft installer file for Pd-L2ork. Now, I did try the Windows 64-bit thing here. I tried these two differences that you need to do in order to install the 64-bit version, and it didn't work. It came up with an error and said, I think it said minidump / stack wall file or directory not found. So that's something that maybe I'll just kind of report as an issue, and we'll see if there's any response to that to get the 64-bit version working. But I've been using the 32-bit version of Pd-L2ork, and it works just fine. It just installs it to your program files x86 folder instead of your program files folder, and so forth. But as far as I know, the links on the main Pd-L2ork software page, I haven't heard any problems from any Windows users. So it's just the Mac users, and this is what you can do about it. Now, if you're a Linux user, there is a Linux section here further up where you can do your own build from Linux, and you can go ahead with that. If you're successfully using Linux, you don't need my help with that. All right, now there is one other option for my students. If none of this works out, there is, oh, please don't do that. There is another flavor of Pd-L2ork that used to be Pd-L2ork as well, but then it forked off into a new thing called Purr Data. And what we're going to do is go to purrdata.info, go to downloads, and then here's Purr Data. This has many of the functions of Pd-L2ork because it was based on it. You click on this, and then you click on this here. And it takes you to another GitHub repository, this time for Purr Data. Scroll down past the pre-releases and go to the one that says latest. And here, this is Purr Data, the version number 2.19.2, Mac OS X. So Mac users, try that. If you weren't able to get the source code compiled using Homebrew, like I've explained so far, you can download Purr Data here and then try installing that. And then, of course, Windows users, incidentally, since this doesn't really say, the Windows version is actually this one that says MingW. x86_64 is basically will install a 32-bit or 64-bit version of Purr Data on your computer. So Purr Data's got the 64-bit Windows thing going and working. So, but for the first video, the previous video, in just kind of introducing things, if you have Purr Data instead of Pd-L2ork, here's the one thing you need to do. And for my future videos, if I use these things, I will need to, just kind of give this a mention. In our first video, we made a knob for our audio input or our mic input patch that we make. Incidentally, Purr Data does have the same browser functions that we had in Pd-L2ork, or you can go up to media to turn audio on or off. In Windows, it's under the edit menu. You could go down to preferences here to set your preferences. And it all looks just like Pd-L2ork because it's based on it. And then if you don't have a preferences menu under edit on Mac, I think it's probably up here on your menu bar. You know, click Pd-L2ork's window. And up in your menu bar, you might see Pd-L2ork. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Purr Data this time. You'll see Purr Data there. Click that to open the menu, and the preferences is probably in there. So anyway, I was saying about the knob. If we just go to File in a new patch, when I look in the Put menu here, the Put menu has everything else. Oh, it's in this one. The Put menu has everything else that we worked with, and the shortcuts are largely the same. Let me get this on screen. I'm sorry. So the Put menu has all the things except it doesn't have knob and it doesn't have image. We haven't used image yet, but there's a way around that. You can go in here, create an object. Control-1 is the shortcut. Command-1 in Mac. You type moonlib. There's a package, an external, that comes with Purr Data that has knobs in it. Then you do / and you go to M knob or MKNOB. And boom, here's your knob. You can right click on it, go to its properties, and it's got all the properties of the other knob. You can change its size, its range, its colors. There we go. And if you want to do the image thing, you can also make one of those. But when you make an image using moonlib, / image, unfortunately it gives you a question mark because you didn't tell it what the file name of the image is. Here, let me try to move this down here. And I right click on it and I go to properties. And it's grayed out, so you can't even. No, now it's not grayed out. You can go to properties, but there's nowhere in these properties to say what the file name of the image is. So you can't make it after the fact. What you got to do if you want to make an image is save this somewhere. Give it a location. File, save as. I'm going to put this right on the desktop. It's good to keep things in folders, though, so that they're better organized. We're just going to name this test. All right. And then, once you've done that, we need an image. Let me dig through my stuff here. I have some images for my classes that I can use. Let's see here. Do I want to use any of those? Some of those are... All right, I'll do this. I'm going to copy this guy over. It's a logo for Microsoft Teams. It's good to rename it to something simple. Let's say Teams. Now let me see what file type it is because I need to know its extension. It's a PNG file. So now we go here, Control-1, moonlib / image space teams.png. Now I can just type that because this is in the same folder, which is the desktop, but it's right next to my, if this was inside a folder, if both of these files were together in the same folder, we'd be all right. And now I just saw it disappear. Hello. I've done this before and it has worked. Did it say anything here? Let's see here. Yeah, I just saved the thing. Let's try one more time. moonlib/image teams.png. And I'm getting no response here as to why. Okay, well, that is something I'm going to have to explore for the future. But at least for the first assignment and the first video in this list, people could see how to do things. Now, here's another thing. And I'm going to do this because I'm going to maybe be, if I use Purr Data, I may be making knobs a lot. If you go into your preferences again, and you go to Startup, remember I said that this moonlib is a library? Well, if you add it to the list here, it'll find it more easily, and you don't have to type the moonlib/. You see how the folder that it's keeping things in is Program Files Purr Data Extra, and then the name of the library. So what we need to put in is C:, and I imagine it'd be a similar thing in Mac. Just look at the paths listed below so you know where the extra folder is. Moonlib. There we go. And I find it usually safe also to put it here. Here you don't type the whole path, you just type moonlib. Okay? Then we press apply. And we close this. Yeah, let's save it. You got to close out and then reopen Purr Data again to have the libraries there. Now I can type Control-1, and instead of moonlib/, I just type knob. That didn't work. I've done this before. It's worked. Oh, come on. Whenever I'm recording, yeah, the moonlib/knob. When I'm recording, it always does stuff like this. It's got a... Oh, I know why. I didn't open Purr Data. I opened Pd-L2ork. That's what happens when you have 3 different Purr Datas on the same computer. Open with. I want to open this with Purr Data. See if it has it as an option. No, I'm probably going to have to browse a computer for it, but that's no problem. No, not the Microsoft Store. Open with. The reason why I'm doing it this way, I could just run Purr Data, the application, go to File, and Open. But I want the option to appear in the list in the future. So it's in your Program Files folder, which this is browsing by default. It's in Purr Data, in the bin folder, PDEXE. Okay, and we'll say just once, so it doesn't open Purr Data by default all the time. Wait a minute, this isn't Purr Data. This is regular PD. What the heck is going on here? Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, folks. Purr Data. Purr. Bin. Maybe it's not the Pd.exe, but it should be. I swear that's what I selected before, and it opened regular PD instead of Purr Data. No. Well, let's see what happens. Yeah, this is not Purr Data. I don't know why, but here we can open it here. Purr Data, 64-bit. And it'd be nice if it opened. There it is. There, that's Purr Data. Now we go to File, Open, Desktop. Test. Now I don't see the M knob there. Let's just try typing M knob. Yeah, see, now I don't have to type moonlib anymore. Let's see if I can get the image to work. Image. Okay, now I'm going to click on this, right click on it and go to help just to see any examples. I don't want to have to read this whole thing. Can't you just give me an example? Oh man, looks like I'm going to have to pause. So here we go. Pause. Okay, I'm back. Figured a few things out there. First of all, that help file was just some general Pd-L2ork thing. It didn't help. But I see what my problem was. I thought it said PNG file over here for the team's logo. Come on. Here, hover over it and show me. It says JPEG. So it's teams.jpg. Somebody might have seen that before watching this video. Like, you're going to have problems for a while until you figure out what you did. All right. But anyway, we could go to the properties here because obviously this team's logo is huge. And let's see if we can resize it. Scaling. All right, so this is scaling. This is not literally putting in pixel width or anything. Let's make it a quarter of the size, 0.25. And there it says -1. Oh boy. Let's hit that, hit apply. And no, that didn't do anything. No, I know in the image function in Pd-L2ork, you can actually change the size of the file. Here you would have to change it in Photoshop or GIMP or something like that before you bring it in. Because you see the rest is grayed out here. It's not letting you do it. So, yeah, So anyway, we weren't even working with images in that first video, but at least now I know Pd-L2ork, the whole image thing, is much better than Purr Data. The Moonlib thing, yeah, you might have to do some other things. But the thing about Purr Data is it does have some things that we're going to be using coming up. If we go to Help Browser, where it says Pd-L2ork data structures, we're going to be working with these. And so it's good that Purr Data has them. The problem is I also want to do a little bit with gem. Now I know not all the functions of gem are working anymore, but here in Purr Data it says Windows and Linux only. Whereas I've had one of my students do a test and they do see gem work in Pd-L2ork. So yeah, but this might be a way, as you explore it, to try and get Pd-L2ork type stuff going with Purr Data. But I highly recommend doing the other thing where you compile Pd-L2ork on your own computer. That will probably work out for people. So do the homebrew of compiling on your computer, and you know, I think that's the best way to go. All right, folks. Next video we'll be learning stuff. We're going to go into Pd-L2ork's data structures, and as you see from Purr Data there, if you have to, as a last resort, install Purr Data, those externals, the data structures are there. All right, folks. See you next time.